When someone breaks your heart, the natural instinct is to make noise, to respond, to protest, to plead your case. You want to tell her how much she hurt you, how unfair she was, how deeply you loved her, and how she threw it all away. And that instinct is deeply human. It's what we do when we feel pain. We cry out. But there's a deeper form of response, one that doesn't play by the rules she expected. It's silence. Because silence, real silence, when delivered by someone she thought would never stop talking, never stop trying, never stop loving, silence becomes the loudest message of all. You see, when a woman leaves or betrays a man who truly loved her, she usually expects a reaction. She anticipates the texts, the calls, the breakdown. It feeds her ego. It reassures her narrative that she mattered, that she still holds power over him. But when that reaction never comes, when he simply disappears, when he walks away and says nothing, her mind starts to unravel. She starts to wonder if she ever meant anything. Her ego, the very thing that made her act with such casual cruelty, starts to question its throne. That is the beginning of the collapse, not of your heart, but of her illusion. The thing is, silence isn't passive. It's not cowardly. It's deliberate. It's a man stepping back and saying, you don't get to hear my pain. Not because it doesn't exist. It does. You've been cut open. But you don't hand her the weapon and then point to the wound. You don't let the person who hurt you feel needed by your reaction. You take that wound and you bleed in private. You let time scab it over. And while she waits for the echo of your voice, she's left only with her own. In the space where your words used to be, she hears her own thoughts. And they're loud. Because without your voice drowning them out, she starts to hear the truth about what she did. She starts to feel the weight of it. That silence becomes a mirror. And in that reflection, she doesn't see the powerful woman she thought she was. She sees the one who lost someone who would have given her everything. And she starts to wonder why you're not broken, why you're not crawling back, why you haven't tried to fix what she destroyed. And that's the moment she begins to feel it, the fracture in her ego. Because she didn't just expect you to hurt, she expected you to hurt out loud. She expected to see you beg or lash out or crumble, but you didn't. You didn't give her the drama, the chaos, the confirmation. You gave her nothing. And nothing is terrifying to the kind of ego that survives on attention. It's not about revenge. This isn't a game of getting even. It's about reclaiming your dignity. Because when you remain silent, you're not just avoiding conflict. You're declaring, I am no longer giving you access to me. My words, my thoughts, my emotions, they are mine now. Not yours to manipulate, not yours to comfort yourself with. And when you do that, you flip the script. You take back what was yours all along, your power. The man who stays silent is the man who refuses to let the one who broke him dictate the story. He's the man who understands that real strength isn't loud, it's controlled, it's measured. It knows when to speak, and more importantly, it knows when not to. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to starve the thing that wounded you of your energy. And sometimes the only way to make someone realize what they've lost is to let them sit alone with the absence they created. That's when she starts to crumble. Not because of you, but because of herself. Because in the end, it wasn't your words that would have broken her. It's your silence that does. There's something that happens when a man finally realizes he doesn't need to explain himself, when he stops chasing closure, stops searching for validation, and simply lets the silence do all the work. See, a woman with an inflated ego, especially one who believes she's always the prize, always irreplaceable, relies on one key assumption, that the man will come back. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Maybe not crawling, but still trying. That's the fuel that keeps her illusion alive. She believes your absence is temporary, not absolute. And as long as she believes that, she doesn't reflect, she doesn't regret, she waits. But the longer your silence stretches, the more that assumption begins to rot. It starts as a whisper in the back of her mind. Why hasn't he said anything? Then it becomes, maybe he's just waiting. But eventually it transforms into something far more devastating. Maybe he's really gone. And that's the moment when everything starts to shift inside her. Because what she thought was control, what she believed was dominance, begins to feel like loss. And not just any loss, the kind of loss that's permanent. That's what time does. It strips away fantasy. It forces reality to settle in. And the more time passes, the more your absence becomes real. Not performative, not manipulative, real. And that's exactly what her ego can't tolerate. It feeds on your attention, even your pain. Even if you're angry with her, even if you're wounded, your engagement feeds her. She can twist your words. She can rationalize your emotions. She can make sense of your presence, even if it's hostile. But what she can't do is argue with silence. She can't twist it. She can't control it. It offers nothing to cling to. So what happens next? Time begins to wear her down, slowly. It's subtle at first. Maybe she posts something online that's just vague enough to get your attention. Maybe she tries to talk to your friends or throws little tests your way, but you stay silent. You stay gone. And suddenly that ego, once so inflated, so confident, begins to feel hollow. Because she was waiting for a reaction that never came. And in its absence, she's left with herself. No distraction, no audience, just the echo of her own decisions. This is where the shift happens, not in a moment, but in the stillness that grows over days, weeks, months. That's when she starts looking at the past differently. She starts recalling the way you listened, the way you protected her emotionally, how you showed up, how you made her feel safe. All of that, it starts resurfacing. But not because you're there reminding her, because you're not. You're gone. And ironically, your silence creates the space for memory to work its way back in, unfiltered, uncompromised, without the ego's shield to defend her. You see, silence paired with time is not passive. It's an active erosion of illusion. And the illusion she built, the one where she thought she could hurt you and still be needed by you, starts to fall apart. She realizes the power she thought she had was conditional. It only existed when you gave her your attention. Now that it's gone, she's not the one in control anymore. You are. But you didn't take control by force, you reclaimed it by letting go. And that's the most unsettling thing for someone whose ego was built on control. Now, here's the important part. This isn't about cruelty. It's not about punishing her or getting even. It's about dignity. You're not staying silent because you're playing a game. You're staying silent because you've realized your worth doesn't require her recognition anymore. Your value isn't up for debate. And you're not going to explain it to someone who proved they couldn't see it when it was offered in full. So the longer she goes without you, the real you, the one who showed up fully, the more she starts to realize what she lost. Not just a man, but a man who had the strength to walk away without making a scene. A man who loved her enough not to beg. A man who knew that his silence would speak louder than anything he could have said. And the deeper that realization cuts, the more her ego begins to crumble. Because in the absence of your voice, she finally hears the truth she tried so hard to avoid. And by the time she understands it, it's already too late. You have to understand something fundamental about how memory works, especially in the emotional realm. People don't remember facts. They remember how they felt in a moment. They remember the intensity, the weight, the depth of emotional experience. And so when someone who hurt you, abandoned you, betrayed your trust, whatever it was, when that person begins to feel your absence, they're not sitting there recalling the logical justifications they used to walk away. No. They're sitting in the quiet, and in that quiet, feelings start to emerge. And what do those feelings say? And they say, maybe I was wrong. But that realization doesn't come quickly. It comes slowly, and it comes painfully. At first, she'll pretend she's fine. She'll keep moving, posting, laughing, maybe even dating. But deep underneath that performance is a growing discomfort that won't go away. It begins like a shadow, just barely there, She won't even acknowledge it at first. But shadows grow when the light fades. And the light she once had, that was you. That was your presence. Your steady, consistent attention. The way you looked at her like she mattered. Like she wasn't just some temporary guest in your life, but someone irreplaceable. You gave her that space, and now it's gone. That space, once filled by your warmth, is now cold. And it doesn't matter how many people she surrounds herself with, none of them make her feel like you did, because you weren't trying to impress her. You weren't playing a part. You were just real, grounded, present. And the longer she tries to distract herself from that fact, the more it grows in her mind. Not because you're doing anything, but because you're doing nothing. Your silence creates a void. And people always project into voids. They fill them with meaning, they imagine, they replay conversations, they wonder, they doubt. So while you're living, moving forward, minding your business, she's starting to feel the dissonance between what she expected and what's actually happening. She expected you to reach out, to chase, to at least say something, but you didn't. And the silence isn't just quiet, it's loud, it's invasive. It whispers to her at night, it echoes in her moments of stillness. And here's the thing, when a woman with ego loses emotional control of a situation, it doesn't just bruise her pride. It shakes the foundation she built. Because part of that ego relied on the belief that you needed her more than she needed you. That she could pull back and you'd lean in. That she could hurt you and you'd still try to fix it. But now the script has flipped. You didn't argue, you didn't explain, you just walked away. Not with anger, with peace. And peace is a devastating response to someone who was expecting chaos. You see, when she remembers you now, she doesn't remember you begging. She doesn't remember you breaking down. She remembers your silence, your discipline, the way you withheld your presence, not as a punishment, but as a boundary. That memory, that image of you standing still while she walked away, it starts to haunt her. Not because of what you did, but because of what she did and what she lost in doing it. And that's where the regret begins. Quietly, slowly, and then all at once. The regret builds because your silence exposes the truth. It reveals that you had more depth than she saw, that you had more strength than she assumed, that you were more valuable than she treated you. And there's nothing she can do to rewrite that now, because the more she plays back the story, the more she realizes how much she underestimated you. That realization doesn't just sting, it unravels her confidence. Because if she was so sure she made the right decision, why is she still thinking about you? Why can't she sleep? Why do your words, your absence, still echo? You stayed grounded, you didn't retaliate, you didn't try to explain your worth, and now, ironically, it's all she can think about. Not because you said something powerful, but because you didn't. Because you chose to speak through your actions. And that silence is louder than anything you could have ever said. And in that silence, she begins to feel the full weight of her decision. Not because you made her feel it, but because time and truth are relentless teachers, and they never stop knocking. Let her sit with that. Let her live with it. Let time finish the lesson you already started. There's a point in every emotional unraveling where the silence starts to morph into something much deeper. It becomes a mirror she can't escape no matter how hard she tries to look away. And in that mirror, she doesn't just see the absence of your presence. She sees herself. She sees every careless word she said, every moment she thought you'd never leave, every time she took your loyalty for granted. That reflection doesn't lie. It doesn't soften the blow. It just stares back with honesty. The ego is a fragile thing, especially when it's built on the illusion of control. She believed she had it. She believed she could walk away or hurt you or test your patience, and that somehow you'd still be there, waiting. That's what she counted on. Not because she was evil, not even because she didn't care, but because deep down she was conditioned to believe that someone like you wouldn't have the strength to let go. You were the steady one, the reliable one, the one who stayed, even when it hurt. And in her mind, that made you predictable. But that's where everything started to collapse. Because unpredictability, when it comes from someone strong, shatters false confidence. When you didn't react the way she expected, her reality started to tremble. She thought she held the upper hand. But the real power in any relationship doesn't come from control or manipulation. It comes from self-respect. And when you chose to protect your peace instead of fighting for someone who treated you like an option, you reclaimed your dignity in a way that nothing she says or does now can undo. What she didn't see coming was how quiet dignity could feel like thunder. You didn't lash out, you didn't try to guilt trip her, you didn't chase her through emotional chaos, you simply chose distance, and that distance became the most painful truth she's ever had to sit with. Because the truth is, when someone truly mattered and you lost them, you don't remember the games you played, you remember the damage you caused, and that damage begins to speak louder than her pride. Now she wakes up and checks her phone out of habit, and there's nothing from you, nothing for days, weeks, maybe months, and every time that screen stays blank, the mirror grows clearer. She tries to fill the void with distractions, new people, fleeting attention, hollow praise, but none of it sticks. None of it satisfies, because none of it is real, and deep down she knows it. She remembers how safe it felt when you looked at her with understanding, not judgment, not lust, but actual care. She remembers how rare that was, and how impossible it is to replicate. So now, that silence she once thought was weakness is starting to feel like a storm. It surrounds her, not in sound, but in weight. The weight of what she lost, the weight of who you were, and who you still are without her. And here's the brutal irony. She may never admit this. Not out loud, not to you, not even to herself fully. Because that would mean facing a kind of vulnerability she's spent years building defenses against. Admitting she misses you, that she regrets, that she wishes she had done things differently. But that doesn't mean she's not feeling it. That doesn't mean it isn't breaking through. She might wear the mask of pride. She might pretend everything is fine, but every time she's alone with her thoughts, that mask cracks just a little more. Because there's nothing more painful than realizing you pushed away someone who genuinely loved you, and they didn't come running back. You didn't need to scream, you didn't need to beg, you didn't need to prove your worth. You just needed to walk away with your self-respect intact, and that quiet exit, it left the loudest impact of all. That's what breaks the ego. Not punishment, not revenge, but the undeniable realization that she lost something that can't be replaced. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. You were honest. And she was too blind, too proud to see it when it mattered. So let her sit with the silence. Let the mirror keep reflecting what she tried to avoid. Because sometimes the most powerful message you can send is no message at all. There's something deeply unsettling that begins to happen when the person you thought would always be there just disappears. Not in anger, not in some dramatic spectacle, but slowly, deliberately, with a kind of calm that's more terrifying than rage. See, when you start withholding your energy, when you choose not to participate in the chaos anymore, it creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, she starts to feel the one thing she never thought she'd associate with your absence. Emptiness. The kind of emptiness that no one else can fill, no matter how hard she tries. And that's because it wasn't just your presence she craved, it was your attention. It was the way you listened to her when no one else did, the way you looked at her like she mattered, even when she was difficult, even when she pushed you away. You gave her the rare kind of attention that isn't cheap. It wasn't transactional. It was rooted in care, in patience, in genuine emotional investment. And the truth is, she started to depend on that, even if she never said it out loud. But she mistook your loyalty for weakness. She thought you'd always be around, that no matter how she acted, you'd come back. That even if she neglected you, belittled your efforts, or tested your patience, you'd still be there, arms wide open. And for a while, maybe you were. Maybe you gave her more chances than she deserved. Maybe you tried to be the bigger person so many times that you forgot what it felt like to be valued. But something shifted. You started to see things for what they were. You realized that your kindness had been mistaken for submission. And that's when you chose to step back, not to punish her, but to protect yourself. Now that you're gone, the silence doesn't just sting. It echoes. It echoes in the conversations she can't finish because your voice isn't there. It echoes in the places you used to go, the habits you both formed, that morning text, that late night call, that safe place to fall apart. Gone. Replaced by a hollow repetition of routine where everything feels the same but nothing feels right. She'll start to notice it in the smallest ways. The music that reminds her of you. The scent of your cologne that lingers in her mind. The jokes she used to laugh at when you were the one telling them. And she'll realize that attention wasn't just something you gave freely. It was something that made her feel real, seen, heard, worth something. And now that it's gone, she's going to chase it. Maybe not from you directly, but from others. She'll seek validation, praise, new faces, shallow affection, but it'll all feel like dust in her hands because none of them know her the way you did. None of them cared the way you did. They'll smile, compliment her, even desire her, but they won't truly see her, not like you did. And she'll feel that absence like a weight on her chest, heavier with each passing day. The cruel truth is that when someone has been truly loved, they can't go back to being tolerated. And that's what she'll discover. That your love set a standard, one that casual flings and surface level attention can't reach. And the more she tries to replicate what she had with you, the more frustrated she'll become. Because it wasn't the attention alone that mattered, it was who it came from. You see, she didn't just lose a partner, she lost the sanctuary, the emotional safety net, the person who saw her flaws and stayed. And when she let that go, thinking she could find better, or that you would always be there no matter what, she made a decision that her ego didn't realize her heart would pay for. But now she knows. Now she sits in the silence you left behind. And it's not just quiet, it's deafening. Because it's filled with everything she didn't say, everything she took for granted, everything she now wishes she could take back. But time doesn't run in reverse. Regret doesn't come with a reset button. To let the silence do what words never could. Let the absence echo louder than any argument or confession. Because sometimes the most unforgettable thing you can do is stop showing up for someone who never realized how much you mattered until you were no longer around. You know, there's something incredibly powerful, almost terrifyingly powerful about what happens when you stop trying to convince someone of your worth, when you no longer explain, no longer defend, no longer reach out to remind them of what they're losing, when you sit with your own silence, when you let it speak for you, when you allow distance to say the words your mouth used to beg out of desperation, it shifts something in the dynamic. It creates a mirror, and in that mirror, she starts to see not just you, but herself. Not just who you were to her, but who she was while she had you. At first, she'll mistake your silence for weakness. She'll tell herself you're sulking, waiting for her to notice. She'll think it's a game, one you'll lose because you care more. And maybe you do. Maybe you cared enough to forgive her more times than she deserved. Maybe you cared so deeply you lost parts of yourself trying to hold the connection together. But that care, if it cost you your peace, your dignity, your self-respect, can no longer be given freely. Because at some point, silence isn't surrender, it's survival. And when she sees that, when she realizes you're not playing hard to get, you're just not playing anymore, that's when the ground beneath her starts to shift. That's when the confidence starts to crack. Because she didn't expect you to mean it. She didn't think the day would actually come when the man who once showed up for her over and over would decide that showing up was costing him too much. Now she has to sit with the consequences, not dramatic ones, not retaliatory, just the simple, devastating consequence of not having you, of not hearing from you, of not being able to predict you or rely on your attention to soothe her ego. That silence is a teacher, and it's an unforgiving one. Because it doesn't just sit in the empty space between texts and missed calls. It multiplies. It fills her mind with questions that only you could answer. but won't, it forces her to revisit every moment she overlooked you, every time she dismissed your efforts, every time she thought you'd always come back because you always have. She'll start to remember the things that seemed small at the time, the way you looked at her when she spoke, the consistency of your care, the way you noticed when something was wrong before she even said a word. She'll remember the safety in your presence, the ease in your company, and most painfully, she'll remember how effortlessly you gave those things to her and how carelessly she received them.